everybody, welcome to another episode of the Atlantic CIL podcast. And I'm here with another candidate for United States Senate, and I'm going to let her introduce herself so I pronounce her name correctly and she say what party she's running under. And we're going to again ask her questions dealing with disability issues here across New Jersey and across the nation. So I'm going to let you introduce yourself, Christine. Go ahead.
All right, so my name's Christina Khalil. I'm running for United States Senate. I'm running under the Green Party of New Jersey. I am a first generation Egyptian. I grew up in foster care, so I've been exposed to a lot, and it's really helped me develop my campaign. It's also helped me understand because I'm on the working class side of the campaign and as a candidate running, so I relate more to the working class than I do to corporations and politicians currently in an office because I work two jobs, a full-time and a part-time, while I'm running for office, and I live paycheck to paycheck like millions of Americans do every single day.
That is a great personal experience. So tell us, what first question I'm going to ask you about is about an issue I hear all the time from people with disabilities across the state is what can we do to increase access to more affordable and accessible housing? So what if you were a senator, what policies would you support that would allow us to do that?
Okay, so there'd be a few things that I would do. One would be a federal rent cap. Two, really tackling these pilot programs because what the pilot programs are currently doing is they get like 20 to 30-year tax breaks and they don't pay taxes. But the people around them, the residents and the people who pay houses and rent currently, they have to cover not only their taxes, but the taxes of this building. So we would also have a rent cap on top of a federal rent cap. So that way people can't be priced out. And if you are going to be building an apartment complex, we're going to be saying, okay, 50% has got to be through Section 8 or through SSI or through whatever is really needed to make sure everybody has equal access. We're also going to make sure that every single building is ADA compliant because there are a lot of apartment complexes that I have found to be affordable, and some are actually in good, decent areas, but they are not ADA compliant where people can't use it. There's no ramp, there's no emergency escape, and the limitations are a real big issue. And then we're going to also I would be challenging the banks and redesigning the mortgage process where if you're able to pay rent for 5 years, you're obviously able to pay a mortgage. So we're not going to make it a hassle to really break a person's back. And then also for the community is we're getting rid of the limitation on the savings account. You should be allowed to save more than $2,000 because the disabled community is the only community anyone can join at any moment in their life. All it takes is one bad second, whether it's medical or an accident.
Yeah, that's something people really they don't know about, and it's being learned about. There's a great movie on Hulu called Patrice that talks about how, people don't understand there's a lot of penalties when you're on these programs, either Social Security, income, especially Medicaid, and you're not able to save. So, like you said, that's something that needs to be addressed. I want to talk about other national issues that I hear about. What is your position on abortion rights? Because people got to understand that as a senator, you'll be voting on different types of national issues that come up. So I just wanted to ask, what's your position on abortion rights, and what would you support in the federal law or not?
Well, I am pro-choice at the end of the day. So I'm never going to raise another person's kid. I'm not going to get involved. I'm not going to be involved during people's pregnancy. So I can't tell people what to do. What I will also be doing is I'm going to make the country more kid friendly. That's going to wind up reducing abortions because currently what's happening is people are getting pregnant, families get pregnant, and they're scared. They don't look at that positive test as something joyous the way it should be. So what winds up happening is people are looking at finances, people are looking at what my future is going to hold, people are looking at their employment because a lot of jobs do discriminate, and then people wind up also they wind up because of the consequences of external consequences of having a child, they wind up going down that route. And then also we want to make it equal for people with disabilities, because I have friends who have visible disabilities and they were born with disabilities and grew up. And then when they got married and pregnant, a lot of people view them as kids, but they're adults. So people are just like, are you sure you can have a child? I've been friends with this person for a long time. So, like, hearing that, it breaks my heart because I'm just like, I know you're capable of having a child. You got married, you're an adult. Like, I've never seen anything, any red flags. It's just, we want to make it where people have the support, whether it's daycare, the proper support in the community, and making it really friendly for all. But at the end of the day, it's the individual's choice whether they're going to have the child or not, but we want to make sure all options are given equally.
All right. What about healthcare? Healthcare is a very important issue that, of course, affects everybody, but especially people with disabilities. So, what would you do to improve our healthcare systems? What kind of policies do you support or not support? What kind of direction would you take the country as necessary?
Well, it would be universal health care, and I would be fighting for that and getting that policy drafted on day one. So currently, people are spending about like 20%, 15 to 20% of their paychecks on healthcare. That would be dropped to 5%. So people are essentially saving so much money and getting more money back in their healthcare. But this would also cover vision, and this would also cover dental. So, and this would also cover things, and I want to eventually expand it. I want to have also wheelchairs covered in this because wheelchairs can be very expensive, and God forbid something happens where, a new wheelchair is needed or needs to get fixed, but you shouldn't be discriminated against because of a disability. I also wanted to cover seeing eye dogs and other care, and really expand to all different disabilities as well. So this is going to be all inclusive. So if a prosthetic leg is needed, or a hearing aid, or bifocals, it's going to cover a range of things.
Yeah. Another question I wanted to ask is how because I know this comes up a lot, but how would you pay for a lot of these programs and expansions? Do you have any thoughts on that? Sort of tax policy or anything else that you would change to pay for these programs that you're suggesting?
So the program would actually get paid. It's actually on my website. If anyone goes and to KhalilForSenate.com, I actually have an entire tab of how do we pay for it right there. Um, so we would be covering it federally. We would be, yes, taxes would raise, but it'll only be 5% compared to losing 20% of your paycheck every paycheck. But federally, we would be able to flourish and give people federal jobs. So it'd be a federal job guarantee, a livable wage, and it would not raise anybody's federal taxes, and it wouldn't really raise anybody's state taxes, honestly, at all. It would just be a 5% yearly on your income tax. So when you go file your taxes, that's where it would be.
Talk about, I know you said federal job guarantee. I know some
Mhm.
people may not know what that is. Could you explain what that is and tell how that would affect their lives?
Okay, so essentially what we're going to be doing with a federal job guarantee, which is actually a genius idea. It was designed by a few other people, and I wound up just adopting it. There's different versions of it, but the one version I do like is we're going to be able to essentially end unemployment. Now, if you can work, you would be able to work if you want to work. So there are some people that have severe disabilities that just can't work, which is completely fine. Then you would still be taken care of and still be treated with dignity and respect. But you would have job matching you. So if you have a job, like say you can't stand for long periods of time, but you're interested in being cashier. We would make sure you're able to sit while you're doing your job. We would find a job that you're comfortable doing that matches your ability level. So a lot of people wind up getting discriminated by jobs currently because, especially if you have a visible disability, and I'm going to say that a lot because I have friends who have been denied jobs even though they have the experience, they have the education, and they have the knowledge, and I know they would be good, but because they looked a certain way, they didn't get the job. So everyone gets a job, and you get the federal benefits and the pensions that come with it. Now what this would do essentially is it would now create a market for the private sector jobs, and it would healthy competition in the private sector jobs, not market. So this would make the private sector job market now say, okay, we have to top the federal benefits, the federal pay, and the federal job guarantee to get people to come want to work for us. So instead of these jobs, instead of having limited job access, where we have such a high rate of unemployment, we do have so many people that want to work but are constantly getting denied work. We would actually make it an equal opportunity for all. And now the private sectors would have to actually work for the workers in order to get people to come to their companies. And then the same thing, the federal job would make sure everyone who is able to work, willing and able to work, they would automatically get placed. So you just have your resume, and then we send you off to a job that meets your requirements, and making sure that the job treats everybody with dignity or respect at the end of the day.
Thank you. What about, I know another issue I hear a lot about for people with disabilities is transportation. So I was wondering if you had any thoughts or policies to improve transportation in the
Yes, that
state.
would actually be covered under a federal job guarantee for me. So not only are we going to redesign New Jersey Transit and make it more the way it should be, make it more easily accessible, but we're going to also create a thing like similar to Uber and taxis, but not really, because it's going to be through the federal market where we're going to hire people and they're going to be able to drive out into rural areas. So like you know how Medicaid has the program that's supposed to bring people to doctors?
Logistic area.
Yeah, logistic care, that's what it is. We're going to sort of expand on that, but we're going to bring it across the country. So it wouldn't matter where you live, we would make sure we hire people that would be able that their cars are ADA accessible, everyone, and we would provide the vehicles if needed. And then people would have all rights, whether you want to go out with friends, you're able to call on the service and it's going to be inexpensive. We're able to, and the drivers are going to have a federal job guarantee. You're able to safely share your feedback. So if something did go wrong with the driver, you can anonymously share your feedback and then we would handle it. And then also urban, suburban, and then when it comes to public transportation, we would make sure buses are ADA accessible, where everybody, if you want to jump on a bus, you could jump on a bus no problem, and making subways and trains a lot more ADA accessible and easily able to get to.
Thank you. Another issue I hear a lot about, especially at the national level,
Mhm.
is immigration. And I wanted to get your thoughts on what you support in terms of immigration. I know for people who've been following the news, President Biden tried to get a border bill passed, but it did not pass Congress. And I wanted to get your thoughts on what you support. Did you support that bill? What would you support for dealing with immigration at the national level?
Well, at the national level, I'm just going on it's on my platform, redesigning the entire immigration process. It is so out of control. Nobody trusts the government. The two-party system has failed everybody. And we also have people locked up in ICE detention centers and prisons and children getting ripped away and going missing. So the immigration system is so poorly done and nobody is getting to the root of the issue. And what the only solution is build a wall to keep us trapped. It's not a realistic thing. So the only way to do it, which is going to create thousands of brand new jobs for the federal job guarantee, is redesign the entire system, making sure we have people who are able to better vet the people that are coming in, make the process much quicker. So instead of, what's currently happening, we have people that are waiting like 10, 15, 20 years to even get processed through the system, and they're already in the country living. We want to make it a 6 month to a 1 year process, whether you're allowed to stay or you have to go, and making sure that the communities are involved, making it a community effort so the community members get to know the people that are moving in. And we would also have people to help with resume building, being very all inclusive, and making sure that nobody and that everybody actually feels safe at the end of the day.
Thank you. Another issue that affects everybody, but people with disabilities as well, is gun violence. And I want to know your opinion about different gun safety measure proposals, where you are on the Second Amendment, and your thoughts on that. I wanted to give you a chance to talk about that issue because that comes up a lot nationally as well.
So I have to look at it from the objective point of view, and the way the two-party system's going and with the way our international relationships are going, a lot of people do not trust the government and they don't feel safe getting rid of their guns. And who am I to say, that, you should, because at the end of the day, the government did create this issue. They lost the trust in millions of Americans, and they handle everything so poorly, and all they do is lie to us. So what I'm going to be doing is investing in mental health, family therapy, and I'm going to actually be pushing for gun insurance registration. So like if you have a gun, just like if you have a car, insurance. And it's going to be from a certain level gun up, where like if you just have a handgun, you might not need insurance because you got the training, but if you have an AK-47, that's a gun that should need insurance. And not allowing to be bought out by the National Gun Lobby, because like that's just so what's currently happening is ridiculous, and we're actually losing funding for mental health. Therapy is becoming a privilege for many, and it's not easily accessible for all. And we have way too much generational trauma and just trauma in general. And we want to make sure that the parents don't have to feel worried when their kids are going to school. So we're going to make sure schools, if they have a worry, that they're able to jump on it. If any student is showing any red flags, a mental health team is able to immediately intervene and properly handle it, not just like put a band-aid on it and then hope it goes away and then these tragedies happen. We're going to be more preventative and proactive and not reaction. So we don't have to say like what our current politicians say, oh, we pray for the people. No, let's prevent this. Let's prevent this. We don't need any more prayers. We need these kids to actually grow up and get involved and have a childhood. We don't need people to live in fear while going to school.
So just to be clear, you you would support an assault weapons ban or not, or that would be covered in your insurance proposal.
I would have to tackle mental health first, because whether I just based on all the research I've done, whether I support an assault ban or not, it does not matter, because there is no way anytime soon that would happen, just because of the rift and the lack of trust people have in the government. So I have to get into the mental health first, and then down the road we could look at regulating certain weapons, and we have to be proactive and prevent these things from happening.
Yeah, that brings up another issue since you brought it up, which is trusting government. I know people have skepticism about government. What are the things that you will do at the national level to push for more trust and faith in government? Because it wasn't always as low as it is now. So I was wondering if, as when we can do what you would do to restore that, because it is, people don't see how that could be a real serious issue, but when these big crises come up, if you don't trust the things you're being told, it can lead to a lot of issues, and we've seen that happen. So, you know, what would you do to restore that faith and that trust?
Transparency and show the receipts. Where's all the money going to? And not taking any corporate donation. And it's evident, if your candidate takes corporate donations and not just the working class and not just the voters, it doesn't matter if the voter donated. The candidate is going to be working for the corporation they've already sold out. They'll never work for the voters. So just not taking any of the corporate money, and also just really transparency. And a lot of politicians also say that oh, I don't know, or they don't have an answer, also giving answers. Why isn't this done yet? Well, this is why it's not done yet. I did my part. I'm waiting on this person to do their part. Holding people accountable in office instead of being dismissive. So always showing up when you're needed to be, showing the receipts, transparency, and having an answer and being able to explain situations.
Okay, and you just keep bringing up another question because this is so great. What's your opinion of campaign finance reform? I know that comes up a lot in our politics, the money in our system, and I want to ask what your opinion of that is and what your
So
feelings are.
there is actually a good idea about campaign finance reform. Actually, there's two. There's one where a person actually, and I adopted both versions. There's one where if lobbying does happen, and it does happen, and corporations donate money, 40% of that donation has got to go to the opposition, so grassroots, and they get 40% of that donation. So now we're making the playing field even. And then also another one is, well, that would also reduce and discourage mega donors from donating, because they're like, well, I can't give you all this money because now 40% has to go to the opposition, and they're going to be able.
That's a creative proposal.
Yep.
I've never heard that
Yep.
before.
And then another one that I really, really liked is eventually banning all mega donors. So like a person can only donate 3,300, but federally we would be providing, and this would also encourage people to go out and vote, we would be providing X amount of dollars per every single voter in a card. And then you, whoever your favorite candidate is, you would give them that money. So that would force the candidates to work instead of just sitting there and not working. So either way, the candidates are going to have to work, but we also want to discourage the donors and the corporations that are in control and making all of us suffer on a daily basis. We want to take the power out of them and put the power back into the people.
Wow, those were like I said, those were some different proposals, and I'm glad that people are thinking. I always like new ideas. Like that's a fresh new idea. You can donate to the oil company, fine, but then 40% of that's environmental groups. So it would like people would have to kind of strategize too of like, okay, I'm okay with that. Like they'd have to get comfortable with that if they still want to donate.
Yeah,
Um,
and that would really help. Sorry to cut you off, but that would like really help, because if I don't win and say I had 40% of like these mega donors and I don't win, and I could always recycle that money for the next cycle, or I can actually donate it to a nonprofit and put it back into the community.
Oh, see, that's really creative. And I wanted to talk about another issue that is just such a big issue, probably is undercovered, which is climate change. And I know people don't think maybe they're sitting there and going, how is that a disability issue? But, as the climate changes, that affects the most vulnerable. First, so people with disabilities will definitely be affected. So, what are your thoughts on policies we could implement to fight climate change or any thoughts you have on climate change and policies to get us in the right direction?
Well, I'm glad you asked that. One of the things that I actually am doing. So the North Water Coalition, I met with them. They actually developed a federal policy that is going to clean the entire water system and remove all chemicals like PFAS and forever chemicals and make everything drinkable. And then we're also going to be cleaning the air. We're going to be holding these corporations. We're going to be regulating them if because what's currently happening is they slide on regulations, they're not following certain things, and then people look the other way. They don't actually find them or hold them accountable. We're going to make sure the workers and the employees have the proper OSHA protection, and that we have the proper filters, water, and because we don't want people to be exposed to like dirty air, that's going to lead to horrible asthma and breathing issues. We want clean air, so we want people to have just equal access to all. And if people want to be able to go to the park instead of going down and seeing a whole bunch of, corporate buildings and pollution being built, everyone should be able to have that. And then also, it's the cheaper apartments tend to be around more polluted areas, and that's also another issue for the disabled community, because those apartment complexes, well, people are forced to move to those areas because of the limitations, and a lot of those based on just affordability, and a lot of those apartment complexes they'll have lead in there, or lead in the water, or just really bad exposure. And we want to plant more trees too and make everything more green, renewable energy.
Great. So I also thank you for your answer. I want to, as we're wrapping up here, and thank you so much for your time. I wanted to give you a chance to talk about sort of foreign policy issues, because I always tell people you're running for a Senate seat, so national
Mm-hmm.
issues come up and sort of, wherever you want to take this, your thoughts on. There's a lot going on in the world, whether it's in
Yes.
Ukraine or in Gaza and Israel. So what are your thoughts on sort of the direction our foreign policy should be going in, and what you think America's role should be in the world.
So I'll start by saying this. America is a very unique country. Granted, we had such a horrible start and we actually continue. I don't think we've ever had a generation or time frame that wasn't actually horrible. We keep hurting the people in this country and other countries. I don't think we ever took a break. But we are also a melting pot of a country. And the entire world looks at our country. And we have people from all over the world that live in this country, and is up to the USA to be that role model and peacekeeper, because we have to represent every single citizen that lives in this country, and there is no other country in the world like America. So we have to work on peace. We can't spend billions of dollars on the military industrial complex that is harming the climate, that is harming our planet, and also ending millions of lives. We need to treat everybody with dignity and respect, and we can't say a dollar is worth more than another human being. So that's where I'm standing with international, because we need to be the voice and the reason, and we need to actually have elected people in office that aren't scared to travel and have conversations about peace, and also hold our current failed administration accountable, because right now we are the number one enemy. We could be number one, the billions of dollars going overseas could come right here, and we could be number one in education, we could be number one in healthcare and have universal healthcare, we could be number one in living, we could be number one in maternal care, we could be number one in everything, but our current administration is making us not only a laughing stock, but is harming the citizens of this country. And what's currently happening in North Carolina, what's happened in Hawaii, we should be helping the people that are suffering. It's the taxpayers that keep this country afloat, and we would not have a country if 25% of taxpayers went on strike today. Our country would fall. It would be so easily able, people would be able to buy up stocks, the market would crash, and people could come in and do whatever they want. We would be in a lot of trouble. And if 50% of the country decided to go on strike, we would not have a country anymore.
So to be clear, do you support any foreign aid anywhere to places like Ukraine or so what are your where do you draw the line for
Our foreign aid should not be used to cause harm and make us a number one enemy. Our foreign aid should be utilized to uplift and build other communities and cultures. So, for example, with Congo, we should be using the foreign aid that we present to them and clean up their water and help with infrastructure and giving people jobs if we want to keep the dollar in power. When it comes to places like Gaza, we should be rebuilding. We shouldn't be harming. We should be talking about diplomatic peace. We shouldn't be sending aid while we're also sending bombs. When things like Ukraine, we should be discussing peace and figure out what's the best safe bet for everybody. We shouldn't be letting people come in and buy up land in another country. So we need to also really look at us, because foreign aid could be used in a good way or weaponized in a bad way. And right now, our foreign aid is causing unities like BRICS to happen, where they're pushing the US out. We want to be joined in, and we want to be part of the growing and expanding countries. We want to be part of what the future is going to hold, because what's happening is we're all going to be left in the dust unless you're a politician that can, has millions of dollars donated to them. Then they could take their family and go to another country. The people who are going to suffer at the end of the day because their poor decision making is you and me.
All right, and I'm going to ask you one last question. You
Yep.
touched on it a little bit, but I wanted to talk about mental health and sort of
Mm-hmm.
because I know that is we serve all people with disabilities as centers for independent living, and often mental health gets forgotten about, and even in the disability community, which is unfortunate sometimes. But what would you do to ensure accessible access to mental health care that so that people can get the services they need in their
Okay.
healthcare system.
So making sure internet is easily accessible and affordable for everybody. and making it virtual, but not only that, creating job markets in rural areas where if somebody needs help with like their social security, making sure case managers and social workers are able to go out to people's houses. So that's an option as well. So that would be a whole new market that is out there. And with the transportation, if an individual wants to be able to go for therapy, instead of like, I don't want virtual, I don't want anyone coming to my house, you'd be able to go to a therapist's office just as easily. So working on that and looking at, okay, where do we fall short? How do we fill in the gaps? And how do we make sure nobody gets left behind? And also another thing when it comes to the disability community, which I think is mental health because a lot of people wind up depressed about it, is marriage. A lot of people can't get married because then they lose their benefits. So I've also had to work with those individuals, and it's a really horrible system because there is no solution for a lot of individuals. Marriage means the world to them, and the fact they can't because they were born or a disability happened, an accident happened that caused a disability, they're not able to live their full authentic lives.
All right. Well, thank you so much for joining us. We covered a lot of issues very quickly, and I want to give you one last chance, one last opportunity to say anything else you want to say before we wrap up here. And you'll find information about Christine's campaign in the description, as well as anything else Christine wants to provide. Again, we don't endorse any candidates here at the center, but we do want to give people information, and we want everybody to be thinking about these issues and voting because this is, making change is hard and policy is hard, and you got to start thinking about it and understanding it and disengaging from the process, no matter how frustrating it is. Just is not the answer. It's just not the answer.
Yes.
So
So
go
I just
ahead.
want to, yeah, I'll just say thank you, everybody. The only candidate, I think, to my knowledge, that's not taking corporate donations. I actually, a vote for me means I actually work for you. And I am completely grassroots. It's wonderful people like Donald and wonderful people, other independent podcasts and media that reach out that gives me the chance to share my platform, because being a third party candidate and a Green Party candidate, we are banned sort of from mainstream media because they don't really want to give common sense solutions a platform, which it is what it is. But thank you everyone for listening. And if anybody has any questions, reach out to Khalil, reach out on KhalilForSenate.com, KhalilForSenate.com. And thank you again. I'm very honored to be here.
All right, thank you. And this was a great interview, and thank you all for listening. Please get out and vote and be engaged in the process. Thanks, everybody. Bye.